Hello, everybody, and welcome to this MITRE Auto session. Today, we will cover a cybersecurity deep dive with Omar Santos. My name is Hilda Arteaga, and I am a community manager of the Cisco community and the host of today's event. First of all, we would like to thank you all for joining us. This is actually the first MITRE Authors event of the year, and thank you so much, Omar, and welcome to this session. We are thankful and honored to collaborate with you on this first event of year 2020.
Thank you.
All right, so on this special event, you will be able to learn more from the IT expert that actually wrote over 20 books and plenty of diverse cybersecurity content. Along the session, you will learn not only about the latest trends in cybersecurity and the network security with NetFlow and IPX, Big Data Analytics for Information Security book, but also about the author. So for today's MITRE Author event, we will start the session with an interview to the author, so we get to know more about Omar, his career path, and his collaboration on different books and publications. Then, the author will provide a cybersecurity deep dive and an overview of the key content of his NetFlow title. During the presentation, you can submit your questions for Omar to the answer using the Q&A panel. So the Q&A panel is located on your right side of your screen or at the bottom of the screen if you are on a mobile device. We will be selecting some questions that we will be answering at the end of the author's presentation verbally, all right? We will also try to cover some of them on the Q&A, but at this moment we most likely will cover many of them verbally. And also, before we start, I would like to share with you something very nice. I'd like to introduce you to the new Cisco designated VIPs from the Cisco community. This is the first time that we have just that many VIPs in the whole community and the Cisco Learning Network. So if you would like to know who they are and check out the list and give a welcoming message or a congratulations message, you are more than welcome. We are going to play some details so you can have a look on the chat. And well, for all of our attendees, we have a really nice surprise. We will be giving away 2 copies of this NetFlow security book on this event. So how would you like to have a copy of this book signed by Omar? The big question is, how can we participate? Well, the only thing that I can tell you is very simple. Stay with us, stay tuned, and during this session, at one moment, we will be having this special raffle in which we will be randomly selecting the lucky winners among the attendees of this event, all right? So the only thing is that you stay with us and you bear with us so you can have like this opportunity. Plus, we have a very great news, and Omar has been very kind with us. He will be giving away also one signed copy of his new upcoming book, all right? So you will be having not only one, but you will be having 2 books. All right, so now let's start with this special event. So Omar, welcome to this session. How are you?
Very good, and thank you for having me here, and thank you, folks, for joining today. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Omar, you're an icon, particularly in security. You have tons of publications. You participate so much in the community. And, well, you are well not only for being a Cisco Press and Pearson author, also for being a distinguished expert and a principal engineer, among many other things. So there are indeed many situations, stories, and things that we can mention about you. And I'm very sure we can talk not only for hours, but also for days. But, well, first things first, so let's start from the beginning. Could you please let us know, how did you get into tech? Was that your passion, or was that your major? Was it a special opportunity? Maybe some carefully just push you there?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, so technology for me, even at early age, of course, it's a long time ago, so I don't want to date myself, but, I have been having a passion for technology since I was a kid, right? So whether it's learning how to program in BASIC with TRS-80 Tandy computer, and then I went to college for it. Then after, of course, college, my degree was not in what I do right now. It was actually more of a hardware engineering, electrical engineering with a computer concentration. And then after that, I joined the United States Marine Corps. And from there, actually, I worked with the DoD. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years. My MOS, for those people that know what that means, is the military occupational specialty. was mostly around crypto communications, so secure communications, and that's how I actually got passion for security, right? It was completely different to what I actually do right now, right? We were doing some proprietary encryption and some ground radar and air support for the Marine Corps and also for other branches of the military. And then from there, I specialized afterwards into an organization that now is a little bit different than the Marine Corps. So this is 20 years ago, but the organization actually came to be, it used to be called ELMACO, so the electronic maintenance company. And then, but my specialization itself actually went to the Marine Corps Forces for Cyber, which is actually now part of the U.S. Cyber Command. But at any rate, from there, actually, I joined Cisco after I finished the military. I was a TAC engineer. I was supporting Cisco security products. Then I moved into security services. We used to call that advanced services. And I was a third engineer in the security practice. And basically, we did a little bit of everything at that time. We did some implementation work with penetration testing, security architecture reviews, and everything. And what I do right now is that I have responsibilities around the product security incident response team. So we are the people that actually investigate all the security vulnerabilities in Cisco products and services. And we also disclose those vulnerabilities. So as you can see throughout the time, from when I was a kid all the way to what I do right now, there was definitely aspects of technology, but also aspects of, I guess my concentration, which is cybersecurity.
That's great. That's a very long path, Omar. And I'm going to make a very small pause. And you can see that Omar is not having a video at the moment. The reason why is because since he's on security, he's in a very private location that we cannot disclose. So we are doing that one. Let's say that he's on a special mission, all right? So that's the reason we don't have his video coming out from. All right. So coming back, it's just security is huge, Omar, and you have been doing tons of things and you have been jumping from different areas, but do you have a favorite technology or area of interest inside security?
Yeah, so and to your point, a lot of people ask me, how can I get started in security? And my answer is basically the same thing that whenever somebody asks you, I want to get started in computers, right? Security is so big. And there's so many different areas in cybersecurity from offensive security, that means, ethical hacking, pen testing or red teaming, which are not the same thing, but that's a different conversation for another time, to detailed forensics, incident response, auditing, cyber insurance, compliance, cyber law. So there's so many things out there. My favorite ones, not because I'm actually doing this, but it's in the incident response, both from helping customers if they're actually under attack, right, and also from investigating the actual nitty-gritty of the vulnerability, so the underlying issues of a vulnerability, and how an attacker actually can take advantage of that vulnerability, create exploits, and compromise the system. So for me, that interests me a lot. In my previous role, so I used to do, a little bit of a pen testing, and that's another thing that I still practice and teach, outside of Cisco. But those are the two areas that actually I like a lot. The one area that I'm actually looking to enhance, because you cannot claim that you're an expert of everything, and whoever actually can claim that is an expert of everything, most definitely be lying to you. But one of the things that actually I want to deep dive is into the new techniques for keeping up with security events and everything, using data analytics, big data analytics, machine learning, and so on, right? So that's a kind of a continuation, of what we are right now. But hopefully that helps.
It helps a lot. And actually, talking about all the things that you have been doing, you mentioned before that you were on TAC, right? Cisco Technical Assistance Center. So how would you describe this experience? no one would thought like someone from tech will move out into all that you have done right now.
So as a matter of fact, that's one of the misconceptions. A lot of people at Cisco have started in the TAC, and a lot of people that actually work in my team also have started in the TAC. And it's because in security, you have to have an analytical type of mindset, right? At the end of the day, you're going to be doing, if you think about it, a lot of troubleshooting, whether you're investigating an issue, whether you're trying to actually figure out how a technology can actually be compromised or finding vulnerabilities. You actually have to have that type of mentality. And in the TAC, we see that with many individuals, because that's what they do. They help customers whenever they're running into some problem. Now in the TAC, I was actually blessed that I was concentrating in security. So like kind of by osmosis, I already got introduced into that aspect. And of course, I used to do this before coming to Cisco as well. But I saw the evolution as well of security at Cisco from the traditional like old IPS and firewalls all the way to what we actually have right now, which is pretty exciting if you think about it. How actually security has grown not only in the marketplace but at Cisco is one of the major not only revenue streams for Cisco but one of the major priorities as well. Right?
Awesome, great. Well, you have been saying so much that it's sometimes hard, to know where to go, but there are tons of questions for you, Omar. So one of the things that you are a very active member of the security community, different areas, organizations, Cisco, outside Cisco, and you have delivered tons of technical presentations and many conferences to Cisco, customer, partners, students. But the question here is, what drives you to collaborate?
Yeah, so one of the things, and this may sound a little corny, to be honest, but one of the things that people ask me a lot, hey, why are you doing this, right? So why are you dedicating, your time only in security? You see only the things that are broken. It may be very stressful and everything else. For me, it's kind of the opposite, right? Even on the weekends, and that's the reason that I actually try to participate in the community a lot, whether it's teaching or hosting events. I help organize events locally and across the industry as well, like B-sides, and I'm the lead of the co-lead of the DEF CON offensive village, so Red Team Village, and I do a lot of things actually outside of Cisco, and it's for me, I don't see it as work. I see it as, I have a passion for it, so it's kind of like my hobby too, right? So whenever you have your hobby and your job, being on somewhat on the same things, again, I don't see it as a yes. A lot of situations can be stressful, but I don't see it as just work, right? And one of the exciting things is that you mentioned the community, the security community, even though it's still a little bit small, but it has grown fairly dramatically in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, right? And not only I'm talking about like products and solutions out there, of course, that's something else, but the community itself trying to actually come up together to find new ways on how to find vulnerabilities, find new ways on how to perform better, forensics investigations, find new ways on how to automate a lot of the things that actually, can become very challenging for security or cyber ops operations. That's actually something that is just growing dramatically nowadays, right? So which is great. Right?
Thank you so much, Omar. And well, the truth is that since the mid-90s, you have been working with information technology and cybersecurity. So tons of things are coming. And very connected, to what you mentioned about helping the community. Another question that we'll have for you is what has been your motivation to write over 20 books? Has that been something personal, professional, a family promise, I don't know, a pet promise?
Yeah, so it's definitely not a family promise or a pet promise. Actually, my family goes why the world you're writing another book or a video course or whatever. For me, as I mentioned, a lot of people actually play golf. I guess I like to learn, right? and I push myself to learn to the way that I can share it with other people, right? Whether it's through a book, through a video course, and so on. But just a kind of a funny story. My first book, even before I came to Cisco, um, it's kind of embarrassing. I only had a couple of chapters in this book. It doesn't exist anymore, of course. It was about NT, Windows NT. And so now you can tell how, I guess I'm a little bit older now. But I don't know, I was like 23 years old whenever I wrote those chapters. And I was a little proud. I took this little book to my interview at Cisco. And one of the guys actually interviewed me. He's now a really good friend of mine. His name is Wen Zhang. He opened the book like for 2 seconds, threw it to the table, and he goes like, "What else you have?" That opened my eyes and say, okay, so I'm proud of writing 2 chapters or whatever for that book. And oh my God, now demonstrate that, what you're actually saying there, it is true or not, right? So that opened my eyes into the fact of, and I tell Wen this story all the time, because I want to learn the technologies, the underlying protocols, the underlying things into the way that I push me to be somewhat an authoritative person to actually say, yeah, this is actually how it works. So that's the personal thing that I like to do about the books. So then whenever I wrote the first book by myself, after I was done, I said, hey, I'm not going to do this again. It's not worthy. These are not the typical books that you're going to sell for New York Times bestselling, or that somebody will actually give for Christmas, to somebody else. So it's definitely not for the money. It's just the nerve factor of actually learning something and getting engaged and sharing it with the community, right, and with everybody else.
Well, that's kind of a story. No one would have thought about that. But thank you so much for sharing that, because we have different people from all kinds on this session, and many of them, they are just starting their security career. So I'm very sure those kind of details and stories are going to give them courage and encourage them to keep going on. So now I would like to ask you something towards what you just mentioned. Well, you talk about your first book, but the thing is since you not only have 1 or 2 or 3, but over 20 books, how come is that you decide what you're going to write about, or how come you pick up the topic, or how is that process happening?
In some cases, I pick up the topic. In some cases, it's because of a certification. For example, I think that you're showing a slide right now that has 2 books in there. I'll tell you, I guess, a little bit, because it all depends on the book, right? So in the case of the NetFlow book, which is the one that you were sharing in here, there was a need for, I couldn't find any book that was authoritative enough to actually talk about NetFlow and the different things that you can actually do with it, how to do that with telemetry, big data analytics, outside of just the Cisco products, right? So in that case, actually, I picked that, and I wanted to focus not so much in Stealth Watch or anything else, but show how you can use Elasticsearch, or at least get started, right, using an instrument in the network, whether it's actually to do, incident response, forensics, or just to learn about the technology, right? So that one was actually driven, I guess, by me. The 2 that you have in front of the slide, the one on the left is actually the new book for the CCIE and CCNP core exam, the one that is actually going to be, that we start, in February 28th of this year, right? So in that case, of course, I was engaged, with Cisco Press and Cisco Learning, and that's what we're writing. It's actually the official cert guide for that. The one on the right is that this is a book that I wrote that is mostly used for universities to teach classes on how an organization can develop a cybersecurity program and things that are policies. And a little bit of an insight on that one is that I wanted to actually push myself to learn beyond technology. And this is the only book that is kind of a hybrid between technology, but it's mostly around policies, about programs, about risk assessment, about the tools and techniques that are actually out there. So in that case, it was a little bit different for me. but it actually I learned, and that's one of the reasons that actually I try to write some of these books, is because I have to do extensive research and hands-on practice and work. It's not so much of actually just writing about the technology; it's actually working with the technology or with that concept, right? So for this one, I interview CISOs of different companies. I have a couple of actually mentors outside of Cisco that are the Chief Information Security Officer, that's what a CISO is, for several large banks in the US. And so in that case, it's a little bit beyond just, hey, how to configure and troubleshoot a device. That's one thing that I really love about, I guess, going through the whole journey and then sharing, that knowledge. And that book in the right is actually being used by many universities around the world now for teaching that class. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Omar. Actually, we were thinking about asking you what's your passion, what drives you, what are your challenges, but you have just given the answer just right now in the minutes before. So something I would like to ask you is when you're writing a book or you have to write any security material, any other material that you have published, can you share with us one of the challenges or something that you found very exciting when you're preparing that material?
Yeah, I give you a couple of. One is a funny one, and the other one is, I guess, not so funny. Both of them are not funny for me because they're challenges, right? But whenever you talk about writing a book for a technology, one of my initial books, I don't know, in 2003, I wrote the ASA book before ASA was actually even announced to the public, so that firewall. And one of the challenges there is that, because it's before we even put the product in the market, I'm working with engineering and they will change the commands, they will change the troubleshooting logs, they will change things. And in many cases, actually, I even put things back into the ASA team so they can actually model their logs and everything better and finding bugs as I was actually writing the book. So there's a lot of dependency on a product, and that's the reason that actually in that book I said I'm not going to do this anymore. It's a lot of back and forth, but that's more of a joke. The other challenge is a lot of these books, especially not so much for the certification type books, and I also write other books, for other certifications even outside of Cisco, but for the books in technology is that in many cases, books are a little bit less, quote unquote, agile, right, than, for example, a video course, right? So that's why I work with Cisco Press, that in many cases, actually, what we do is we write a book and we also do a video course that we can actually update, more often, right? And so one of the challenges is actually, of course, technology changing, new, platforms actually being invented, new things, whether it's a Cisco product or an open source component or whatever, things changing the market, right? And the way that now we're refreshing and trying to actually look at how books are structured, we're putting them with a lot of other collateral material, right? For most of my books right now, what I do is I also have a Github repository that I add additional information as they actually come in. It may be that you and me, develop a new open source platform that was not invented, 2 days ago, but now I'm able to actually, because, it's referenced in the book, I'm able to update, that material through like GitHub or provide more examples and things like that. So it's a little bit more modern ways of actually addressing, the ever-changing technologies out there.
All right, thank you, Omar. And well, just to conclude these small interviews, since the scope of the book, Network Security with NetFlow, covers network telemetry and metadata information to respond to cybersecurity incidents, how would you, or who would be the target audience for this book, actually?
Actually, it can be anybody. And actually, let me tell you a little bit of NetFlow as well. And NetFlow was not invented for security, right? It was actually invented for billing for service providers back in the day, way before I actually even was in security. So in the early 90s or mid 90s, NetFlow was actually used by service providers to basically, put a bill to their customers and see the utilization. and then evolve into actually getting additional information into it. And at the end of the day, looking at that 5 tuple, right? So the source, destination port, source, destination IP address, and the protocol. And the more people actually looked at it, the more it makes sense for do capacity planning, to do, of course, security. But the security aspect grew dramatically. So started by people that are doing incident response to see what's actually happening in the network. So going back to your question about the scope of the book, who actually will be the target audience for that, it will be anybody in the security community that will have to instrument the network to see what's happening, right? But I can also be for people that want to know about capacity planning and network utilization and so on. And then at the end of the day, the book is actually around security. It's actually how to not only look at flows of traffic that may be in communication between, let's say, a call center to a data center, or from the access to a data center, but also what is actually leaving your organization, what things may have been exfiltrated out, looking for anomalies. And later in the presentation, I'll do a quick demo on things like that. But anybody, again, even outside of security, that wants to instrument the network to actually obtain additional insights will definitely benefit from it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Omar, and that really clarifies that question. And thank you for providing more context and for sharing your story and experience with us so well. What is next is just like, are you guys ready for a cybersecurity deep dive with Omar? So Omar, I'm going to give you the presenter role so you can please guide us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first disclaimer while I'm sharing my screen here is that the word deep dive in cybersecurity, it's a little bit of loose word right now because as I mentioned, cybersecurity has so many different areas and concentrations that in 10, 15, 20 minutes, of today, we will not even be scratching the surface. But what I want to do is I want to at least tell you some tips on how you can actually keep up with the adversary tactics and techniques. What we actually call TTPs is actually adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is actually not a new concept. NIST has been publishing about this concept for quite some time, probably about 10 years or so. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that introduced that is a good friend of mine. His name is David Waltermeyer. But at any rate, what I want you to understand is that a lot of people ask me, okay, so what is new in the threat landscape? Well, pick up the news and you will see, right? So there's so many things that now are related to cybersecurity that is not like what we used to say before. Yeah, adversaries are getting more or are getting better in the techniques. Their obfuscation techniques are getting better. Now, cybersecurity is being used for not only from criminals, but hacktivists, nation states, and for many different purposes, right? So one of the things that actually the industry has done very well, and specifically MITRE, is this thing called the MITRE attack framework. And as a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll share my screen real quick, and I'll cover that in a second. And I'm a big fan of the attack framework, and actually I contribute to it, and I have worked with MITRE for quite some time, and we're trying to expand it over to other areas as well, so stay tuned. But as you see here, they just released the attack framework for industrial control systems. But what this is a way that you can actually, and I'll make it bigger in a second, but the things on the top is what we actually call in the past, the kill chain, right? And it's a little bit beyond the kill chain, but it's from having initial access all the way to what is actually the impact of an organization if there's a cyber attack, right? So from reconnaissance, whether it's passive and active reconnaissance, to actually looking at the vulnerabilities, doing, exploitation of the vulnerabilities, and then maintaining persistence, evading the techniques or different techniques to evade your security products and your security, operations, all the way to exfiltration and command and control and the actual impact of the organization. So what you can do with this framework, and I'll show you another tool you can actually use for this as well, is that you can actually deep dive into each of those elements of the quote unquote kill chain, or I guess the life cycle of a cybersecurity attack. And then let's say if you want to see how lateral movement is actually done with a component object model and distributed COM, right? You can actually read about that tactic, and you also have some examples of other things like tools and exploits and everything that actually have been used, the mitigations for them, and tons and tons and tons of references that you can actually learn about just that technique, right? So what I say to everybody is that we're introducing in the industry new techniques, or I won't say introducing, but sharing what we're actually seeing as far as actually attacks, and especially through MITRE, and not only sharing that yes, this is a technique that a threat actor has actually been used, and potentially what is a threat actor in there, but the tools and procedures that actually have been used before, right? So if in this case muddy water, you have never heard of it, you can actually click on it and actually get additional information. So I'm really pleased into how the community has actually participated to actually share this information. And the good news is that a lot of these actually has been integrated with products. Like Cisco is actually integrating this with products like CTA and many other products as well, right? So it's not so much of a website that actually just have some definitions and some references, if not that many folks in the industry are integrated with the technology that we actually use nowadays. Now, there's also the Navigator, and the Attack Navigator basically looks like this. And in this case, it's actually a tool that you can filter, and you can actually, highlight what is potentially relevant on something that you actually, may be encountering as far as a potential attack or an incident you may be actually handling. And, you probably can highlight, a few of these and color code them into the fact that you can actually share it across your infrastructure, with other people, and then start pairing up. This may be actually the technique, and this is actually what we observe. And at the end of the day, that's actually what we call threat intelligence, right? Now, there's a new concept, and I'll put here Intel. So threat intelligence is basically, if you're not familiar with the concept, is having some type of awareness of the tactics and techniques, and potential malware and command and control communications, and and everything before you actually observe that attack in your organization. So let's say you are a financial services customer, and if your peers in the industry are actually seeing somewhat of an attack, and they actually can share it successfully, then you may be able to actually prepare yourself a little bit faster, right? So think about like you're driving down the street, and God forbid that somebody actually hit your car. Knowing that somebody was going to hit your car even 10 seconds before or 50 seconds before, you may be able to actually pull out and in the side of the road, and then avoid for somebody to actually be able to hit you. There's another concept also called threat hunting, right? And a lot of people actually are using this type of concepts on knowing what's actually happening as far as actually the motives of the attackers, and also the techniques that are being used. And the threat hunting is a concept that you can actually use to leverage to potentially identify either attacks or threat actors that may be in your network, on where your security products or the security operations that you have may not be able to actually catch them, right? And of course, there's a lot of actually presentations here at Cisco on where you can actually use things like Umbrella and Umbrella Investigate and Stealth Watch and many others to do threat hunting, right? This is not a presentation about any products whatsoever, but at least I wanted for you to understand the concept. And the concept is so popular nowadays that most of you may be already familiar with it as well. And having a good understanding of all these techniques, right? So if you're brand new to security, what I will say is at least start from looking at these techniques, because these are real life. This is not like something that is hypothetical. These are, what we actually in the industry have actually observed, the type of techniques, the type of tools, the type of communication, and the threat actors behind it, right? Yes, they actually have some type of attribution. Attribution is super hard nowadays, but please take advantage of that, right, as well. So the other thing is, and I was actually just looking at some of the questions coming in, but now that I'm sharing my screen, I couldn't see. But a lot of people were actually saying, like, how can I continue my journey, in if I already started, right? So if I have a certification like, a CCNA or CCNA Security, CCNA CyberOps, how can I continue? We're actually, thinking the same thing on an ongoing basis at Cisco, right? So as hopefully everybody knows, we introduced a new CCNP Security and CCA Security certifications. Actually, we revamped all of the certifications, right? And we also introduced a DevNet certification, but specifically, right now, the new CCNP and CCA certifications actually are, refreshed completely. And starting with CCNP Security, just to address some of the questions, that I see coming in here, is that we separated, the requirements of, or I would say, we divorced the requirements of having, let's say, a CCNA or CCNP before you can get your CCIE, or, in the case of CCNP, you don't have to have a CCNA to go straight to it. You are the best judge of whether you should go straight to the CCIE, right, and forget about the other certification, right? Probably for somebody that is starting or in the intermediate, that may not be the most cost-effective way to actually do it. But one of the cool things that we actually introduced is that we have a single exam, which is a core exam, and this goes the same for all the other technologies. But since I have security in front of me, right, we have the 350-701 S-Core exam, and that's the required exam in order for you to actually pass the CCNP or the CCIE as well, right? Now, if you actually pass this exam, you automatically get a specialist certification, right? So if you actually just want to get the core security concepts, the fundamental concepts, and also the core Cisco technologies in security, you can actually just take this exam, get your specialist certification, and of course, then decide later on whether you want to go for any of the concentrations or for the CCIE. Now, a lot of people, as I actually talk to many customers out there, what they're actually doing and planning to do is that they take the core exam, and since DevNet also included a new certification or released a certification, they also have the professional certification in DevNet. And if you actually pass the security automation exam, so the implementing automation for Cisco Security Solution, the S-Auto exam, and you pass these two core exams, right, so DevNet and security, basically you're getting 4 certifications with 3 exams. Actually, we're getting 5, if you think about it. You're getting the specialist certification for each one of them, right? So that's 2. Now you're getting the CCNP security, and I guess there were 4, right? And then the DevNet certification. So in that case, you're actually getting 4 certifications with just passing 3 exams. And the other thing is that, as you know, network programmability and automation not only is crucial for network operations and traditional networking, but also for security, right? In order for you to keep up with security threats, and you will learn that if you actually navigate through the attack framework that I was actually mentioning in there, you will learn that humans by themselves cannot actually solve this. You have to actually implement a lot of automation, right? It's not so much of actually applying an access list in a firewall anymore, right? It's automating a whole ecosystem. And that's why we're actually introducing a lot of emphasis on automation and the new, more modern security concepts, on looking at northbound and outbound API or southbound APIs, looking at SDNs, how security actually plays in there, looking at the different technologies to interact not only with the devices, but other things within the security operations center as well, right? So that's, of course, for your reference, this is actually the exam that I was actually talking about, and so on. The other thing that I guess I wanted to share, because, we're giving away a couple of the books for NetFlow, is, and I want to actually keep it even outside of NetFlow, right? It's actually telemetry and metadata. How can you gain access, or I want to say gain access, but gain insights from the network or from applications, right? As far as actually metadata, right? And a lot of people actually think about metadata as just looking at the 5-tuple, right? The source IP, destination IP, source port, destination port, and protocol, but it extends way beyond that, right? It can be identity, information about a user. It can be the processes on an application that is actually, being transformed, and correlating all that data, normalizing them, and then use it to potentially automate, remediation, or at least automate or help automate a lot of the aspects of the cybersecurity investigation, right? And that's where actually NetFlow comes in. And a lot of people say, okay, so why use NetFlow if I can actually do a full packet capture, right? If I can collect a PCAP file. Well, the problem with PCAP, if you're a small organization, you probably can do that. But even if you're small, you may not have the resources for storage, right? And the compute resources to actually do a full packet capture in every single area in your network. And the other thing is that actually now you have things in the cloud, right? So how can you actually do this in the cloud? That's why a lot of people are looking into obtaining insights, not only from the network, but also the applications and that metadata, and of course, visualize them and being able to actually determine, what's actually happening in the organization. And the good news is that first, NetFlow itself and IPFix, which is actually the standard, I will not say new because it's been on the system for quite some time, but it's the IATF standard that is based on NetFlow that many other vendors actually also use. The good news is that there's a lot of open source tools that you can also use. As a matter of fact, the guys from Elasticsearch, they have the Elastic elk stacks, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And right now there's an open source project that is just called Elastiflow, that it basically is actually using that to be able to actually visualize, and it's actually fairly powerful on getting information from NetFlow and being able to actually, use it for cybersecurity investigations. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely become familiar with that. And then, of course, we have a lot more elaborate tools and products like StealthWatch. And if you have never seen StealthWatch, basically what I did is I actually did a quick demo, and I kind of pre-recorded just to make sure that, we take care of the timing here. But basically, in here is just a navigation through a StealthWatch, the Insights dashboard. And now you can actually see that by actually manipulating things like, again, NetFlow or any other data, you can actually not only look at what's actually happening, but try to assign a risk score. We call it a concern index, right, and a target index. And of course, you can actually, click on this, and it gives you way better definitions than I can. But at least having a concept of looking overall across all the organization, what are the things that are actually happening, and what are the things that you may actually have to pay attention to. So for example, you can actually deep drive to a specific host, and then based on that host, you can actually see all the communications that is actually taking place from that host. And as you're seeing here, there may be things that entity, that host, may be actually doing that it may not be an attack, but it may be against your security policy, or maybe it's some abnormal behavior. If you're actually seeing that, a user with this IP address is actually getting confidential documents and put them in a Google Drive, or in many other places, right, and especially around the world, then you probably can think that this may be some type of either exfiltration, that their device is actually compromised, or it may be an insider attack, right? So the reason that I'm bringing, of course, StealthWatch and these tools in here is just to have at least the fundamental things about security, which is visibility and control. You can never, of course, protect what you actually don't know, and you don't have visibility. And of course, that will allow you to actually have some control of policies, or in many cases, it's not a policy, it's not so much of just like an ACL or an access control list in a firewall. If not, it may be actually an internal procedure or policy that you actually have to now put in place as well, right? So again, I can actually go on and do a quick demo of the actual StealthWatch. I'm not going to go into that right now because of time, but at least I wanted to actually share with you a few things related to of course, the tactics and techniques, and not only from an attacker perspective, but from a defensive perspective that you can actually put within your organization. So with that said, I think that we actually have, oh, and by the way, I also have a GitHub repository for those of you that are getting started, that I put in there information about, data forensics and incident response, also offensive security, so penetration testing, exploit development, reverse engineering. It goes into a lot of details, and even I have like sample code of programs that I have written in Python and Bash and in Ruby. If you're actually getting started in cybersecurity, right? So I actually started that GitHub repository for my own benefit, for me to track. Think about like a glorified bookmark. And then I started actually using it for my books and my video courses and some training that I do. And then I grew and grew and grew, and it has over 7,000 references. So I also take advantage of that, right, for me to actually learn. So, what a better way to actually just make it, available to everybody through GitHub. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And with that said, Hilda, I pass it back to you. We can actually get some of the questions actually that I see that are coming in right now.
Oh, thank you so much, Omar, for guiding us and providing this deep dive. Yes, we have different questions. So you all have been talking a lot about certification, so I will be sharing some of them. So someone is asking, in your opinion, is it feasible to go straight and attempt for the CCIE security before getting the CCNP, in your opinion?
Yes, and that's one of the things that I was actually trying to address before, because I saw that question coming in before the slides that I had. At the end of the day, you're the best judge of your, where you actually stand, right? The cool thing is that about the new certifications, right? So again, you just have to wait until February 28th. You have to take the core exam. So that for sure, you actually have to pass. And I can tell you that, having written the book for that, it is pretty extensive, right? So it covers all the different technologies and even beyond just the traditional Cisco technologies, but it goes over tons and tons of different areas of security fundamentals, plus even application awareness, and even has some concepts of app dynamics, a couple of things in there, and so on. So if you expect that the core exam is like that, think about the CCIE lab will also be very, very, very extensive. So it's pretty comprehensive, right? And the other thing that we introduced in the CCIE security lab is that you also have 3 hours to demonstrate that you can actually do design. So there's design exercises that you actually have to do. So I'm not saying that it's actually a little bit more complicated than before, right? You will be the judge for that. So it all depends on what you actually feel comfortable, right? But at the end of the day, you actually have to take that core exam. And after taking that core exam, you probably will say, okay, probably not. I may not have that broad experience across all these different technologies. I may actually take one of the concentrations exams over CCNP and then become CCNP before. right? And then go over the CCA. But a really, really good question. As a matter of fact, I get that question all the time.
All right. And related to these kind of like questions is like, will the certificate guide score 350 701 will be sufficient for the concentration exam? Because this guide is only like for the core exam, and they're having some issues to find material for the concentration exam preparation. So is there anything you would like to share or advise here?
Yes, absolutely. So for each of the concentration exams, there will be material from either Cisco Press or from Learning at Cisco. So we will have classes, and also through the partner community, there will be many, many different classes for that. Yes, all the concentrations, and there are a lot, right? So it's not, we're talking about not only security, but every single certification, or not certification, but the areas, technology areas actually change, right? So we retire some, and we revamp, networking, collaboration, and data center, and so on, right? So with that said, some of the material actually have been available now, and to be honest with you, some of these technologies that you're going to be encountering, whether it's security or data center and everything, a lot of the products and technologies and the concepts, it's not like we actually just invented it last week. You can still become familiar with at least the concepts of, in the case of security, right, on how, what are the different types of attacks, and there's so much collateral, out there that you can actually leverage. But yes, actually, you will probably start seeing some of those concentration exams, books and resources and video courses, probably somewhere around, late February, March timeframe or so. Again, I don't work for Cisco Press or anything else, but that's what I'm actually being told.
Okay, thank you so much, Omar. And all this information is going to be available after February 24th, right, on the Cisco Learning Network?
Yes, indeed.
Correct. So this is a question towards security. So after CCNA CyberOps, what is recommended to be the next step for a cybersecurity certification?
That is the question that I get all the time. So the first question that we actually had before, whenever we did the announcement of the new certifications, is what is the future of CyberOps, right? Is CyberOps is going to be dead? So we're not killing CyberOps. That's the number one thing, right? So CCNA CyberOps is not going to go away. I will say stay tuned. We will be, focusing on security at Cisco. Security is a big pillar at Cisco. I cannot share, any of the information, but I will say stay tuned, right? There will be progression. A lot of people, what they do in CyberOps, even if you're, part of that, if you already have the CCNA CyberOps, of course, you can go for the CCNP security and pick one of those, concentrations as well. And as a matter of fact, I was actually talking to a few folks that are, I cannot say the company, but it's a fairly large financial services organization in the North Carolina region. And they are CCNA CyberOps. They work in a security operations center. They want to go more into programmability and go into automation and so on. So basically what they're doing is actually they're taking the CCNP core exam. So as soon as you actually pass that, you can also prepare for the CCIE. But the cool thing is that a lot of the concepts that you already learn in CCNA CyberOps, like the security fundamentals, what are the introduction to DFIR, those are, I will not say a lot of the concepts, right? But a lot of them is a prerequisite that you have to know for the core exam. So at least you're a little bit ahead of somebody that's actually just starting from scratch. And then the other one is that they're looking into taking the security automation exam and then following, that path, which is extremely popular now with DevNet as well. So that's the immediate one. But in the future, again, so I cannot share much, but, security, I'm just going to leave it like that. Security is extremely important for Cisco. So just stay tuned in the CyberOps program.
Okay, so we have another question that I found kind of interesting. It says, will the Meraki products will have placed on Cisco Security. They will have a key role, let's say.
Yes. So to summarize that, pretty much, and that's what I guess I do for Cisco. Any product at Cisco will have to have some type of a security play, whether it's actually to make sure that it's actually secure, that we address the vulnerabilities, and Cisco is actually extremely transparent. It's one of the companies, and it's not because I actually work in that team, but I deal with a lot of other, vendors in the industry and everything, and, whether we find a vulnerability internally or somebody else find it, we disclose that, right? So I wanted to actually at least highlight that. So we look at security, across the whole portfolio. Now, for helping in a security investigation or security, network security per se, absolutely Meraki is actually something that it has been a focus. It's not something new. Meraki has also security appliances that you actually can deploy. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm running at home, right? An MX series, right? So if you think about it, a lot of the modern implementations of network products are or will be managed in the cloud, right? And that's one of the beauties of Meraki, is that you can actually distribute, all these different devices across the organization and scales, right? In the beginning, a lot of people actually think, okay, so this is actually only for smaller organizations. Well, we have big, huge events where there are thousands of access points and hundreds of, these security devices that are actually being deployed and managed through the cloud. And Meraki is definitely a big role for that at Cisco.
Okay, so I will mention 2 more questions, and then we will start to close up this event due to the time. So the first one will be, what programming languages is recommended for cyber data analytics?
Yeah, so you went straight to cyber analytics. So let me start with cybersecurity first, and then go to analytics, and probably the answer is going to be the same. Just because Python is the number 1 recommended language to actually get started, it kind of translates that into security as well, right? And it's because Python is very powerful, right? So you can actually from parsing logs, from an application, to creating your own exploit, to looking at things that you can actually manipulate as far as actually data, and then visualize the data to analyze potential risk within the organization and do analytics. Python has been like the number 1 out there, right? Just full disclosure, a lot of other people in the industry, because of the popularity of the languages, they say, okay, if you want to go into a specialization in security, like for example exploit development or reverse engineering, and if you are reverse engineering some binary that it has written in C, well, Python is not going to help you that much in there. You actually have to know C in order for doing that. So there are some areas that you actually have to really go into specialized languages, because what you're actually doing, right? But if you're just getting started, I will say start with Python. 2 of them that actually are very popular in the security community is Ruby, and it's because a lot of the tools like Metasploit and some of the other ones actually are using Ruby for, not only the tool, but the exploits that are being shared, and so on. And, scripting languages like, just Bash and, basic Linux, you actually have to have a background in Linux for sure. But PowerShell in the case of Windows, right? So those are areas that you actually want to explore, because also attackers are actually using legitimate applications and legitimate scripts through PowerShell and everything to do, their malfeasance. So having a good understanding of those will definitely be beneficial. So start with Python, move on to some of the scripting languages, and then specialize into some other ones if you actually want to specialize in, I don't know, let's say reverse engineer of malware that is written in C, for example. And for reverse engineering, of course, I'm going like super in the tangent, but you also have to have like assembly language and everything else. So I don't want to like super overcomplicate it. And that's the reason that I always recommend at least start with Python. It's actually a little bit easier to digest and simpler to get started.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for answering most of the questions, Omar. I know there are still some questions that we haven't answered, so what we are going to do is I'm going to review them with Omar, and they will be available on an FAQ document that we'll be placing on the event page where you just register for today. So thank you so much, Omar, and thank you so much everyone who has joined us today. So here are some extra resources and references of like everything that Omar has been mentioning. So if you would like to have extra information, you just please feel free to have a look there. And well, also we would like to, this is the moment where we would like to announce the winners. We have been selecting them randomly from all the participants that we currently have. So the first winner is going to be Richard Terrell. So this is kind of later in the United Kingdom. But Richard Terrell, congratulations. You have been selected as one of the winners for this free copy of the Network Security with NetFlow book. And so we will contact you via email. We will use the email that where you just registered. And let me share with you the other winners. So one of them will be going to United Kingdom. And let's check out the other one. All right, the second person is Danny Velasquez from Guatemala. So, you, Danny and Richard, congratulations for earning this prize. So we will contact you via email, someone from the Cisco community, to arrange the delivery of this book. And remember that you will be having an extra book of the new ones that Omar is going to be publishing in the upcoming weeks. So all of them will be sending to you to your places, okay? And well, finally, for all of you who didn't get the opportunity to earn this special prize or to win it, we have a very nice surprise for you. We talked with Cisco Press, and they created a special discount for all of you. For all of you who have joined this session, you will be able to redeem a 45% discount, which is a very nice discount. You can use it for any single book, ebook, video material, educational material. I just placed information on the chat. So there you can find like the code. Use this code, please. This discount is available till January 31st. That is till Friday next week. Use it because that is for you and you can use it. And within 45%, that means almost half of the total cost of anything you are looking for. So well, thank you so much, Omar, once again. Thank you so much for offering yourself to provide an extra book to the winners of this session. And well, we hope you have learned a lot from this session. And we would like to ask you to please fill out a survey. The survey is going to pop out or come out in your window or mobile once we complete this session. It helps us out to know if we are doing well and to identify what kind of topics you would like to see or authors in upcoming Meet the Authors event like this one. So once again, thank you. I wish you have a great time. Thank you for joining this first Meet the Authors event of the year 2020, and we hope to see you next time. And thank you once again, Omar.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.